So let's chit chat about having a developer diary. So what is a developer diary? Well, it is a place where you write about developer things, kind of like thinking back to like elementary or middle school when we had like diaries or journals or logs. That's basically exactly it. It's just a central location where you get to write about your developer things. This can include like what you did for the day. So maybe making a short note at the end of the day of what tasks you accomplished. It can also include decisions that were made by stakeholders, which is actually quite useful if you need to go back and reference them, and or a neat way to accomplish a task that you were actually working on at the time. It really just all comes down to what you actually want to put inside the diary or inside the journal or inside the log. And you might be thinking, well, hey, Jay, that really does sound like an actual like blog. Like, what is the difference then? Well, for me, I'm going to say it's completely different from a blog, because a blog, you really think about having like a complete formed thought. It has your beginning, it has code examples, it has explanations, all that kind of stuff inside like a post. But with a developer diary, it's really more what you want to make it. And like what I really think you should consider doing is just writing down what you're doing for the day. And then if you want to put in like how you accomplish a task, then put it in there. But you don't have to go into super in depth and try to explain XYZ theory and why it works this way, because that's really what you get out of a blog post, is that extra like piece of context, not just like here's the code snippet on how it's done. So like maybe something I'd put in a blog like at cctplus.dev is more of like, here is the composable architecture. It does XYZ thing, and here is how it's set up, and here's why a reducer type architecture works really well in SwiftUI. And I'd go really big into detail about how it works, why it's the right choice, that kind of thing. Whereas on the developer diary, I might just put the code snippet of like, here's how a store is written. Here's how to write a store using the reducer protocol. And I say here's how, I mean literally just the code snippet of the struct and then the structs inside it with that reduce function. So just to like reiterate what the differences are so that it's a little bit more coherent, to me, a blog is a more formed thought and a larger piece of work. Whereas your developer diary can be really used for super short entries, super short code snippets, or just a link if that's useful. So today I literally did that. I literally took a link from a YouTube video and made a new like log in my diary about images and core data and just linked to that YouTube video. I wanted it to be close to where I was already thinking about images and core data, and so it made perfect sense to just toss it in the diary. Now, I don't necessarily want to put that on like Mastodon or Twitter. I just want to own it myself, and that's where it's going to go. And it definitely does not deserve a blog post, just that's not what my blog is for. So this diary just gives me another place to put things. And even more so with those distinctions in mind, it allows me to be okay with writing something down and storing it somewhere without it being a full-fledged thought and without making sure that it looks great for someone else to read. So why do you exactly need something like this? Well, there's a few reasons why you should be writing things down. Number one, it helps keep your head clear. So because if you use your developer diary to write out like the decision that was made or the next task that you need to get done, or like I said, to keep logs of like what you were doing that day, it allows that to get out of your head and you can start thinking about something else. Your brain is actually very similar to like a computer. Like it's going to run out of RAM at some point. You're going to run out of memory at some point. And if you don't want to run out of RAM, the easiest thing you can do is get stuff out of your brain. And that's where a developer diary comes in. So a good example of getting something out of your brain is, hey, you're working on the button to send an email. Joe told you that button should be blue, but right now it's red. You can either forget to make that button blue because you just didn't write it down somewhere, or you can put it inside your developer diary, or wherever you want to put this, journal, log, whatever. And then when you go and review like your notes from before, you have it logged somewhere. So you know what to do with that button. And you don't forget about it because you don't run out of space and it doesn't just slip your mind. You can actually go back and check it out. Number 2, you're going to be remembering things more. So by writing down the fact or storing it somewhere other than your mind, you're just reinforcing that idea and you're more than likely to remember it again. So by seeing something more than once or writing it down more than once or typing it out more than once, you are actually going to remember that more. It's why, like, if you went to college, like, they really, really reinforce the fact that you should be taking notes handwritten because you're going to be taking more thought into what you're putting down on the page. So same thing here, except for the handwritten part. If you wrote the perfect service on how to like upload images, great. Maybe you should do a short summary of what you did or how you did it and put it in your developer diary. You never know when you're going to need it again. And the next time you're solving this problem, you can go back for it. Which actually leads me into point number 3, which is it actually creates a reference. So by writing something down and putting it somewhere purposeful, you actually start creating a reference book that you can go back through and check out. So literally, like I just said, you have that like image upload service. You can go back through now and go check that out. Check out that summary, check out the steps you took to solve it or whatever you want to say. And the next time you have to solve that problem, you don't have to start back at square one. You have it all written out. You can go solve it yourself. And that's where I really think the developer diary comes in handy, are those 3 things. So like I said, it keeps your head clear, you will remember things more, and you start creating a reference that you can use as kind of like your own personal Stack Overflow. So what exactly can you use as a developer diary? Like what tools can be used, that kind of stuff. I'm going to give you 4 tools that you can use yourself. And they're going to go in my favorite to least favorite order, and then we'll talk about them. But first off, there's an app, like a PKM app, a personal knowledge management app, Craft, Notion, Obsidian. There's tons more. Those are just the 3 big ones. Then there's a general purpose note-taking app. So you have like Apple Notes, I guess Notepad. I don't know the Windows equivalent. I'm sorry, I'm very much in the Apple ecosystem here. I would consider Google Docs one of these. Basically anything that's just very simple to take notes in and has very little friction. Number 3, a plain file folder system on your computer. These can just be like markdown files, text files, just in a folder that's on your computer somewhere. Or 4, an analog notebook. So like a journal, like a nice little journal here. So let's go through these and break them down just a little bit more. My absolute favorite option is option number 1, and that's the PKM app, the Personal Knowledge Management app, which is Obsidian, Craft, Notion. The reason why I think it's really important to use one of these apps instead of like a plain notes file or something like that is because of the searching and the linking that can happen in those apps. So what I mean by that is like in all 3 of them, Obsidian, Notion, Craft, you can link to other documents while you're writing out a note. So let's take the image uploader. Let's say we're going to tie the image uploader to Core Data. You can then say, in your image uploading service, you could then just tag the doc basically about Core Data. And now those 2 documents are linked and you can get from one document to the other really easily. It just helps like reinforce that like this is related to that. And I think that's super useful. Also, another reason to go for these type of apps is they have some kind of searching usually built in. So they have, Craft has a really robust search algorithms. Notion is all right, and Obsidian is also all right. But these are, but being able to search inside your text really helps, especially if you're trying to create that reference that we just talked about. Like that just like takes it one step forward. Now, number 2 and number 3, the plain text and the plain like Apple Notes style app. Those are basically on the same level for me because they don't really support like searching to the best capabilities, and they don't always have those linking features. And I think those linking features are super important in something like this. And usually they don't really completely support code snippets unless you're putting them inside like Markdown and then viewing them inside like a Markdown editor, whether that's like VS Code or something like that. Like that's totally doable. And that is something that like option number 1 actually does support, is the code snippets, which is really nice. They're usually, those apps have like actual code snippet support and like code formatting and code highlighting support. And I think that's really important, especially for a developer, so we can actually see and understand and get all those pretty colors like if we were just in the IDE. Now, option number 4, which is the notebook, is on here because I know that some people really like to take notes by hand, and I don't want to exclude you and make you feel like that's not a valid way. It totally is. If it works for you, great. It doesn't work for me totally, just because of the previous reasons I've mentioned that I like the digital tools. But if you're going to use a notebook, here's what I can recommend. I personally like the Litterm 1917, which is what this is. I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a link to all of my suggestions in the description, actually. But what I really like about it is the dot paper. So with the dot paper, it just makes it really easy to like line things up. And then also, these notebooks come with page numbers already, and there's an index at the beginning, so you can start creating kind of a reference. It's not as flexible as like the digital tool, but it is still pretty flexible, where you can start making that table of contents, and then inside the pages you can reference other pages based on their numbers. Also, these notebooks come with stickers, which are pretty neat, so that you can label the spine and put a sticker on the front, again, so that you can keep it all nice and labeled. So I would highly recommend like this style notebook. Again, link in the description below. But ultimately, a notebook's notebook. As long as it works for you, that's what matters. This is just my favorite one. I currently use these for bullet journaling. If you're interested in knowing how I do a bullet journal, like let me know in the comments below. Now, back to the developer diary. One other thing I want to mention is making it public. I'm a really big fan of working in public. You don't have to make it public. This can be purely just for you. So it's totally all up to you on this one. And I can't really tell you yes or no. I like doing it. I like putting my code stuff out there. It makes it easy for me. Also, it gives me something to play with if I ever want to, I'm really tired of all my other projects, I can pick something else up. So that's what I really like doing with it. And also because I really like working out in the open, I have one that is actually public that you can go see right now. It's devdiary.heyj.coffee, and I don't know, I just started it like a couple days ago, and I have a bunch of notes that I need to add into it. I just haven't yet, but they'll go in there. So it'll be a little bit more populated. And it's just notes, short snippets, summaries of what I've been doing during the days, stuff like that. It doesn't have any work stuff in it. Now, I am able to run both my work and personal from the same folder. Thanks, Git Ignore. But it doesn't have any work stuff in it, so you can't see any of that. And it is public on GitHub if you also wanted to see it. So it's just Dev Diary at my GitHub account. But again, if you wanted to go check out, see how I'm using a developer diary, go to devdiary.heyj.coffee and you'll be able to see it there. And that's my spiel about using developer journal, developer log, developer diary. I'm just calling it developer diary. Lots of other people have called it different things. If you have one, let me know in the comments. If you have one that's public, even better, so I can go look at it. Maybe let me know in the comments, because I'm always curious about how other people are doing it. So again, just let me know, drop a like, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I will be back in another video. Bye, y'all.